It is my honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker, who I met pretty much a couple months after Patrick and I moved here, and Panache and his beautiful wife Jan came here and went out to lunch and immediately fell in love and connected. And as I said last week, we have been very, very blessed because Panache is a powerful vibration of one love and a message of awakening on the planet at the perfect time. And he has been holding us and lifting us and walking with us behind the scenes over this past year. And so we've been blessed in ways that you don't know. So to have him here today and celebrating his new book, which is just filled with such a high vibration. Truly, we are so, so grateful and blessed. Please give him all your unity love. Panache Desai.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So I was here yesterday with my children, and those of you that are parents, as you get older, your kids begin to ask more and more questions as they become more and more curious. And in light of the fact that this is Sunday, I did some research, and apparently Adam and Eve had some kids, and these kids became curious as they got older, and the leading question in the Adam and Eve household was, Dad, why aren't we living in Eden anymore? What happened? And so all of a sudden this question keeps coming and coming and coming, and eventually, as you know, children just don't let go of questions, they hold on to them. So Adam, mustering all of the sincerity that he could in his heart, responded to his children and said, guys, there was a point where I had to let you know the truth. Listen, your mother ate us out of house and home. I just thought that was perfect for this morning. And the thing I love the most about being here in Naples and having a family here and having this book and this expression really take hold here is that we as a community are holding this consciousness together. Okay? And I don't think that people realize what that actually means. What it means is that when I'm on tour and I get to be with people, I get to meet people that have been impacted by the work, whether it be through the Oprah interview or whether it be through my last book, Discovering Your Soul Signature, or the podcast. And there are literally people who are drawn to come to me with tears in their eyes to share how much of a difference that's made. And I want you to be with that for one moment. Because that difference isn't just the difference that an individual is here to make. That difference is the amplification of the power and intentionality of an entire community of people together. So every breakthrough and every blessing and every miracle that has been shared throughout the course of my time, and I've just begun the first leg of it. We were just in Austin, which was great, in Seattle, and I took the red eye home on Friday. And what I've discovered is that the energy and the momentum of this message, you are enough, is no longer confined just to the walls of a church, to a spiritual audience or community. It even translated to the lady sitting next to me on the flight home, to where she said, "What do you do?" Which is always a very hard question for me. And it's a hard question for me because I understand who's breathing me. It's a hard question for me because I understand that what I do is just the surface level of a deeper expression that's flowing through me, that in fact, I don't do anything. I know who's in charge. I know where the words come from. I know where the energy comes from. I know where the love comes from. And I just have the pleasure of witnessing life unfolding. So she said, "What do you do?" And I was in a celebratory mood. I had received some wonderful news in Seattle amid the scare around the coronavirus and people being quarantined and not being allowed out of their houses and schools shutting down. All of a sudden I get a phone call from my publisher that says, "Mr. Desai would love to inform you that your book has become a national bestseller." And again, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I don't have the ability to do that. God did that. God did that. And so I couldn't help but get the impact of what happens when we have the courage and the willingness to stand in our vulnerability, in our truth, in our honesty, and just simply speak from our hearts. You know, we really do have the ability to touch lives, in some cases to save lives, in some cases to turn lives around, and it's not that we're doing anything other than just simply having the courage to be here and to be profoundly human. I've been doing this spiritual thing for a very long time. Very long time. I was born into a spiritual family in London. My grandmother raised me, and for the first 5 years of my life, she prayed and meditated and chanted, and I was in this atmosphere of worship. And just as with all of us, what happens in the first 5 to 7 years of our life defines us until you have an awakening for the duration of our existence. And so I was blessed to be steeped in this environment where at the subconscious level I was being imprinted with all of this wonderful wisdom and energy, and most importantly of all, just this feeling tonality of presence. Of presence. And then, of course, life happens and we begin to, at some point, not feel safe. And in the presence of that lack of safety, we falsely believe that we are not enough. How many of you relate? Raise your hands. How many of you have moments of not feeling like you're enough? Even though you know that you're the child of God and you were made in perfection, there is still this conditioned aspect of us that believes in some way, shape, or form that we are not enough. And here's where it gets interesting. We then build this persona and this identity and this version of us in order to pretend in the world because everybody else is pretending not to be God as well. I'll say it again. We then build this persona and this identity in the world to pretend because everyone else in the world is pretending to not be God as well. Yes. And here's what I mean. We're pretending to be afraid. We're pretending to walk with a lack of trust. We're pretending to walk with a lack of faith. We're pretending to walk with a lack of abundance. We're pretending to walk with a lack of health and vitality. And all of a sudden, our pretending becomes the truth. And that truth gets superimposed over the ultimate reality, which God spoke over everyone, which is that we are more than enough. So you see, I'm here today to, first of all, let you know that there isn't a broken person in this room, that nobody needs healing, and that nobody needs fixing. And in being at the front line of awakening now for my whole life, I can tell you that it's one thing and one thing alone that is undermining your ability to truly access and live in connection with God. And that is the fact that you don't feel like you're good enough. You see, what I've discovered in working with people from every capacity, every nationality, and every walk of life is that no matter how much they're able to accomplish externally and materially and prosper and have all of these trinkets of separation, the deeper feeling that they want more than anything in their lives, which is to know peace in their hearts and love and joy, remains ever elusive. And being curious, like Adam and Eve's children and like my children, I began to look at, well, what's the common denominator? What is the thing that is holding people back from their magnificence? Because we know every Sunday we're told over and over again that we are divine, yes? And when we're told this, right? We're told every Sunday that our prayers and our visioning has the ability to bring into manifestation that which we focus on. We are told this, yes? So we are given the foundational messaging, the energy, and the tools, and yet for some reason there's a disconnect between the messaging, the tools, and all of the practical application of all of the scripture that we get here and the experience of our daily lives. And what I would like to do, and what I would like to support you with this morning, is to unwind the root cause of the separation, the fear, the lack, and the scarcity. My journey's been a very interesting one. I've always been a very reluctant messenger. I was probably the last person that I would imagine ever standing here. And that's probably a great thing, because it allows me to have no point of identification to any of this. This is just where I show up and let go, and then something else takes over. And it's always been like that my whole life. And yet there have been moments in my life where, even though I've had this deep spiritual foundation and this deep core, I too have questioned my worth and my value as a human being. And it's amazing how it happens. Every single one of us has been led to believe in some way that our worth and our value is tied up in what we do and what we have. For some reason, we're not just valued for who we are. And this became very pronounced for me as I got older and navigated life, because I felt weird enough already with all of these spiritual phenomena that were going on around me. And it was further compounded by a decision. And I'll share this with you just to accentuate what it is that we do and the lengths that we'll go to find belonging. I wanted to study philosophy in university. Makes perfect sense now. Now when you think of Panache Desai, you think, oh, he's a very philosophical human being. He's pondering the greater questions of life. However, being of Indian descent, if you're not a doctor or a lawyer, you're a failure. So my grandfather, in his loving way, who wanted me to be successful and wanted me to not struggle in the world, because he had to struggle being an immigrant, said, Panache, what are you going to do with a philosophy degree? Why don't you study law and business studies? And in that moment, I made a decision that wasn't aligned with my heart. It wasn't congruent with who I was. It wasn't what God wanted for me. It was what my grandfather wanted for me, but it wasn't what God wanted for me. And how many of you know the feeling when you make a decision that isn't what God wants for you? You know that feeling you have inside of you? It's a horrible feeling, because you know that you're lying to yourself. You know that you're lying to yourself. And in that lying to yourself, all of a sudden you're looking for approval and acceptance outside of you from somebody who may or may not love and accept themselves. And so here we are in this loop and in this insanity, and no matter how hard we try to make those around us happy, or to make those around us okay, or to make those around us elevated in some way, shape, or form, no matter how hard we try, we fail. Because we're looking for love and acceptance and belonging from all of the wrong places. Why? Because we just don't fundamentally feel as though we're enough. There have been so many moments like this. The most powerful moment was approximately 5.5 years ago, right after my first book came out, 2014 in April, where Jan and I received a phone call that no parent ever wants to receive. We were pregnant with our second set of twins. That wasn't the phone call. I'll tell you what the phone call was. So during the course of the pregnancy, you have scheduled ultrasounds. And about 3 to 5 months into the pregnancy, we received a phone call saying, Mr. and Mrs. Desai, there's a problem with one of your babies. Would you please come to Wisconsin for an emergency ultrasound? That was the phone call. And in that moment, a journey began that has fundamentally shifted who I am, altered my life, and has led me to be able to finally deliver a message like this into the world, which I believe is a message that I was born to really share. So we're ushered into this office, lo and behold, ultrasound, and Celeste, our daughter, was diagnosed with a congenital heart defect. And doctors being doctors, and of course I understand it now, I didn't at the time, because I always seem to err on the side of the worst case scenario, lovingly, in the most compassionate way possible, tried to tell us that she wasn't going to make it through the pregnancy. That we would be lucky if she would actually survive. And that even if she did survive, because of the lack of oxygen saturation that she was experiencing, she might not make it very long. So we should prepare ourselves to transition this child either in the womb or shortly after her birth. And this journey all of a sudden took the high of being an Oprah in February 2013, to having a book that comes out with a major publisher, to being the younger brother of all of my peers and colleagues that I love. Wayne Dyer was here at the time, Deepak and Neil Donald Walsh and Gary Zukov, all of these beings that I love with all of my heart, and being set up to completely move into that space. This is what the universe brings me. This is what life brings me. Life brings me the most powerful intervention I ever could have received. So Celeste subsequently was born. Her twin brother Leonardo came out pink, and Celeste came out blue. And she was taken to the emergency cardiac pediatric unit and was pretty much evaluated, and within a few hours of her life had her first open heart procedure. And all of a sudden, our reality, this who I thought I was, what I thought I had done, the difference that I believed in some small way that I had made, was nothing. It was all gone. It didn't matter. Whatever modicum of success that I'd experienced, whatever I'd accumulated, whatever I had managed to do in the world, just didn't matter. Because in that moment, all of a sudden, this reality, the fragility of life, had entered my experience as a father. This journey was an 18-month journey with her. 4 open heart procedures later and a heart transplant later at 18 months old. 18 months of hospitalization. The suffering that I was experiencing was so intense in the midst of this that at one point in my journey I had no choice but to retreat to the chapel downstairs. I was present to the powerlessness that any parent feels in the presence of being unable to help their child. And the irony was that I was somebody. I'd sat next to Oprah, she touched me. I'd written a book. I was able to help people navigate their way out of some of the most intense experiences. Experiences not too dissimilar than the one that I was having. But my attachment to her making it was literally amplifying and compounding the pain that I was feeling inside of me. So I'm in a chapel not too dissimilar to this, and I end up on my knees. And I just literally said, I just can't do this anymore. Can't do it. I don't know what to do. And no matter how hard I try, the pain that I'm feeling is not going away. In that moment, I just threw my hands up in the air and I just said, okay, I get it. If she's meant to die, I can accept that. I'm willing to let her go. If that's what the outcome is of this soul's journey, I am willing to let her go. Okay, Mr. Panache Desai, who's able to resolve everything on behalf of everyone. And in that moment, I realized that the whole thing all along wasn't about all of the things that we had been told. That the whole thing all along was about the degree to which we're able to trust and surrender. And that the degree to which I was unable to trust and surrender was the degree to which the suffering was getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. Because I wasn't just dealing with Celeste and her journey. Jan's biggest fear was losing a child. My mother, before she had me, had a stillborn baby girl. And so literally, all of this pain was just everywhere. And I have to tell you that she's 5 now. She's an absolute pistol. And she won't tell us what happened in heaven. Not yet. Even though we keep asking her. She goes, I'm not telling you. And as much as you could be looking at this externally and saying, wow, what a traumatic thing to go through, here's what I have to say to you. Her journey corrected my heart defect. I will never know the donor family what they went through so that that heart could reach my daughter. And this is what we have to understand as human beings. That this being human thing isn't about anything spiritual at all. It's about being profoundly ordinary. It's in our humanity. It's in being fully who we are and realizing that we are perfect by design, that the light of God fully shines through. Because in that moment we are embodying what humility is. And my deepest wish for all of you is that that entry point, that shift in feeling, come not through a crisis, but that it come into your life through your willingness to do what I was forced to do for my own benefit. And just to put your hands up and to say, you know what? I don't have what it takes to make it through this. I've tried everything that I know to do. But I know that I'm not alone. I know that I have a connection to something profound within me. I know this because Mark shares every Sunday with me the truth of who I am in innovative and loving ways over and over again. And before that, somebody else did. And before that, somebody else did. And before that, somebody else did. And this is how blessed we are. Because God keeps knocking on our heart. And at some point, something's going to happen that's going to force you to open the door. I have realized that we are not limited by intellect, by race, by gender, by choice of sexual preference, by nationality, by religious ideology or belief. We are limited by one thing and one thing alone, and that is the degree to which we feel that we are enough. Because in the eyes of God, we are enough. And at some point when we get that we don't have to do it, that it's not about us, that in the grand scheme of things, we're this small dot in eternity, we allow the magic to happen through us. We allow the divine to flow through us. We allow the blessings and the grace and the love that we know is available to us to not just elevate our lives, but to elevate the lives of every single human being that we meet. You know what's interesting is that in being at home, I feel like even in Naples, most of you don't really know who I am. You have your perception, you have your assumption, you have your idea, you have what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've read, what somebody else has said to you. But you don't really know who I am. And my greatest joy in life now is through this gift of this message to show the world who I really am. To stand in the vulnerability of that truth and to let people know that in being who we are enough. In being who we are enough. It's not the gift, it's not the teaching, it's not the ability to pray, it's not the ability to stand on this stage, it's not all of those things that we think we have to be. It's in our willingness to be who we are that we are uplifted. Because that greater expansion comes not from us, but through our willingness to surrender to the source of all. That's what I would love to support you with now. Are you ready? Okay, close your eyes and take some breaths. Grace, save me from all of the things that I wanted or that I thought I wanted. in order for me to be able to be guided back to who the divine created me to be. Thank God. Grace delivered an intervention that fundamentally made me reevaluate what life is about, why we are here, and the preciousness and gift of time. Grace did that. You may open your palms and call on the power of the divine of your heart, because it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter how you've lived. It doesn't matter the choices you've made. In this moment, you can start again. From knowing and feeling that you are enough. I ask the divine to fill your heart with the courage to be yourself, and to support you in consciously acknowledging and remembering that you are not alone, that you don't have to pretend, that you don't have to suffer. Take a breath and repeat after me. I am enough. I am perfect. I am abundant. I am healthy. I am loved. I am love itself. This is why I am here. This is who I am. This is all there is. Rest in the awareness of your breath for a few moments. And receive. Take some breaths and bring your awareness back. We don't know the impact of our life. We don't know the degree to which our life has a transformative power. But the blessing is that we don't need to know. We just simply need to show up. And to be reunited with this feeling of being enough, we can finally embrace the truth that who we are is perfect by design. Who we are is perfect by design. So before I go, I have a gift for you. Would you take out your cell phones? Hit the little text message thing on your phone. And what I would like you to do is punch in the number 33777. 33777, where the number is, and then type in the word perfect. Perfect. Text the word perfect to 33777. And what that will allow you to have access to is a wonderful monthly membership for free that I've created called Perfect by Design. I want you all to walk in the knowing and the absolute embodiment of this feeling place that you are enough, that you are perfect by design. And so you will receive that as a gift. You're welcome. Before I go, I just want to share how much of a pleasure it has been for me to watch Mark. Come here. And I have to tell you that the more I travel, the more I realize how much of a treasure and a blessing we have at home. And that there's not another minister in the world who can sing and dance in the way that Mark sings and dances. That there's not another minister who can actually shuffle while he's praying at the same time. Nor is there a minister who loves and shows up as well prepared and as well anointed and blessed as he does. And so I am blessed and honored to know him and to be able to call him my friend. And he is a friend to all of us. And so when this invitation came into being to come here and to be with all of you, I was deeply moved to be able to share this message, the gifts of the book, this greater shift in feeling with our home community of Naples. And so thank you, Mark, for just being all that you are.